There's a little segment we call Poop Plane. And we decided that since we're doing so many Boeing stories, Boeing deserves its own sound drop. So this is our new official Boeing segment sound drop. I'm leaving on a jet plane. And look out for our parody, Leaving on a Shit Plane. We're working on that right now.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, no, that's for real, man. Boeing plane traveling to San Francisco forced to turn around after poo left from a broken toilet flowed into cabin and left passengers smelling foul odor.
Oh, wait a minute. They were heading to San Francisco? They were just trying to acquaint people with San Francisco on the way. They were just giving them a preview of what they're in for.
Sensitize them.
Yeah. I didn't realize that.
Well, I always talk about how they merged with McDonnell Douglas in 1997, changing the culture. Lesser known is that they merged with Carnival Cruise Lines last year. So this is, the culture of Carnival Cruises bleeding into their business practices.
Right.
A United Airlines flight traveling to San Francisco was forced to make a U-turn in midair and return to Frankfurt after feces flowed from a broken toilet into the cabin, filling it with a foul-smelling odor. United Airlines Flight 59 was 1 hour into its 11-hour, 30-minute journey to California when the captain of the Boeing 777-300ER decided the best course of action was to return back to Germany rather than continue to fly across the Atlantic. That's the right call. Could you imagine? Like the whole cabin smells like shit and doing an 11-hour flight.
It's a long one. Yeah. If it were like a quick New York to Chicago, you'd be like, all right, folks, we're just going to muscle through. But you can't cross the ocean like that.
No. FlightAware shows the plane circled for a short time over the North Sea to the east of England while the crew weighed up their options. Technicians were unable to find an immediate solution to the problem. The smell permeated through the entire aircraft shortly after taking off. The aircraft, which is just 7 years old, was back on the ground in Germany just 2 hours after taking off. Now, that is significant to me. Yeah, the more recently a Boeing is built, the more likely you are to encounter these kinds of problems. But once they move to, I think it's Nikki Haley State, North Carolina. Once they open that facility,
she's South Carolina, yeah.
South Carolina, they just started slapping these planes together. The whistleblower who just met with an untimely end in a parking lot the day before he was to continue his testimony, he had already testified, and he's been saying for years, that in order to meet their production schedule at that plant, they just started grabbing defective parts out of the garbage and using them anyway. And when the FAA went in to investigate, they found there are hundreds of quote unquote, they call them non-conforming parts that are missing and unaccounted for. So those are probably on your planes. On Friday, March 29th, United Flight 59 returned to Frankfurt following a maintenance issue with one of the aircraft's lavatories, a statement by United read. The passengers were provided with hotel accommodations overnight in Frankfurt and were rebooked on a different flight to San Francisco the next day, the statement added. The incident came on the same day a fellow United Airlines flight traveling from San Francisco to Paris had to be diverted after the Boeing jet suffered engine problems. Flight 990, a Boeing 777-200, had to touch down at Denver International Airport after the crew reported an issue with one engine. Wait, folks, it's going to get better. In a statement, United said the flight landed safely with all 273 passengers and the crew of 12 disembarking. Also on Friday, a United Airlines Boeing 787 flight was forced to make an emergency landing after wind shear injured passengers on board as the pilot feared he would run out of fuel. The Newark-bound flight from Tel Aviv was diverted to New York Stewart International Airport because of reported extreme turbulence.
Newburgh, represent. That's my hometown airport. Tiny little airport, Newburgh, New York.
So you know this airport.
Yes,
I've never even heard of this airport.
I lived 3 minutes from there before we moved here.
Okay, so now we always want to be fair on this show. This is the only one I'm saying might not have been their fault because I flew out the next day, and that was the most turbulence I have ever experienced. I have never seen like the stewardesses getting knocked around the aisle. I've never seen that before.
Well, imagine they hit that turbulence with the shit on the floor, and it starts flying around. It nosedives, fall 500 feet through the air. You got shit flying all over the Airbus.
I was on an Airbus.
Yeah.
No, the takeoff was really rough. There were several points in the flight where we were really just going up and down and up and down. And the landing, oh, man. I said this on the Jimmy show yesterday. My understanding of God is that he has a very morbid sense of humor. So being the guy who keeps talking about how dangerous Boeing is, who went out of his way to take an Airbus, the God I know would go out of his way to make that guy die in a plane crash on an Airbus. Right. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, this is it, man. God's going to get a chuckle out of it. This is it. You drew the attention of Yahweh to yourself with these segments. No, I honestly, if I were not flying so much myself, I would feel bad to do these segments for people who are. But I'm right there with you, man. I'm flying more than I have in my life, so I'm right there. There were 312 passengers on board the Boeing 787, 7 of whom were taken to hospital with minor injuries. Another 15 of the passengers were treated on site for injuries sustained during the flight, according to New Windsor EMS. High winds were the cause of extreme turbulence that prompted the emergency landing. New Windsor EMS said the United Airlines flight was making an approach to Newark from Tel Aviv when it experienced high winds at around 6:30 p.m., according to News 12 Westchester. So, yeah, I took off like 15 hours after that. So it was probably, those conditions were probably still active. Passengers on board reportedly complained of nausea, and some said they had chest pains due to the turbulence. No severe injuries have been reported. An FAA statement said United Airlines Flight 85 landed safely at New York Stewart International Airport, about 75 miles upstate of its intended destination around 6:45 p.m. local time on Friday, March 29th, after the crew reported a passenger medical emergency. These latest incidents involving a United Boeing plane is another hit for the beleaguered airline manufacturer as they continue to battle an ongoing safety crisis. And you know what? I don't know why it's always United. Boeing planes are distributed throughout different airlines, but it seems like almost every one of these stories
they got a bad batch.
Is a United Boeing. Maybe. So yeah, it just keeps the hits keep on coming. These things are happening so rapidly that even though I'm on this beat, I whenever one of these stories really breaks through, there are a bunch of incidents I didn't hear about. So these are some of them. Another Boeing plane, also operated by United Airlines, was grounded 2 weeks after it was found to be missing a panel after it touched down. So the panel just kind of ripped off and nobody noticed until they landed. The plane, a Boeing 737-824, touched down in Medford Airport in Oregon despite the missing part, with no injuries reported. You don't need that. You don't need, a lot of these panels are redundant.
Right.
You don't need all the parts on the plane. Just a few days.
Well, on the ship plane, they could have just blown the door out the way they do sometimes, air it out a little bit, make sure the seatbelts are fastened nice and tight.
Haven't they ever seen Aliens?
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, no, exactly. Worked for her. Yeah.
Right, sure. Just a few days before the plane with the missing part was grounded, another Boeing plane had to land after hydraulic fluids spewed from the landing gear mid-flight. The forced landing happened as the San Francisco-bound 777-300 embarked from Sydney with fluid filmed leaking from its undercarriage. Okay, so just to really scare the living shit out of everybody, literally. So that's the plane that landed without the panel there. So It's going to make you want to get on a plane, right? And here's a little video of the hydraulic fluid coming out of the plane in Sydney. All right, so watch by the wheels. That's where you'll see it once it goes in the air. So there you go.
There it is.
There's the
a little
hydraulic
red circle.
fluid.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah. So hey, fly the friendly skies. That is the latest on our Boeing watch. So plan those vacations, folks. Just make sure they're on an Airbus.
Exactly. And we did a public service segment yesterday on the Jimmy Dore Show that's talking about how, you can look up the model of the plane that you're flying on. And it turns out, almost 100,000 would-be passengers have already looked into it and either canceled their flight or picked a different one because they don't want to fly on one of these.
Yeah. That article, it was published in Fast Company. And it has a title something to the effect of how to avoid flying on a Boeing or something if you want to look it up.
Please clap.